There's something about travel and exploration that I've always loved in tabletop RPGs. You know, the sense of journeying the wilderness, having all sorts of random encounters, the sense of wonder and danger combined. And I've had very different kinds of experience with it over the years. Some games skip it entirely. You just say like you're going somewhere and you're there. And there are other games that hand you full procedures like rations, watches, encounter rolls, the works, and every variation in between. I've had a good time with all styles, honestly. But I kept coming away with this itch, this feeling that there was something about travel I still wanted to say. And if it were up to me, I'd say it in a different way. Well, now I have the chance to do it. If you're watching this, you'll probably know this, but most games, when they have procedures for traveling, they do it in one of two ways. There's the Hexcrawl, which is a grid of equal-sized hexes laid over a map. Every hex is the same size, so you have always a good feeling of how far things are. You can move freely in any direction, and it's great for tracking terrain, weather, and supplies as you go. There are also point crawls, like key locations connected by lines. There's no grid, no exact measuring, just meaningful places and the routes between them. It's very light on prep. Every junction is a choice about which road you take. So it feels more that this is about the destination than the journey. I generally love both of these models, and it's not that I'm trying to fix a problem, really. It's just that neither of them was doing exactly the things I needed for this game specifically. This is Mausworn, the game I'm currently developing, which combines Mouse Ritter and Ironsworn. If you haven't seen my first video on it, it's here on the channel. It's the last one before this one, and it gives you a brief introduction of what to expect. But basically, you're mice adventurers exploring a world that was once dominated by humans that now have disappeared. So here is how Mausworn does travel and exploration. I'm calling it Tilecrawling. Let me start by saying that I'm not taking credit for inventing it. Honestly, I figured that if you think your idea is super fresh and unique, it's just because you haven't stumbled upon the source of the first person that did it yet. So, with that being said, I know that for the next few minutes, this might sound like a point crawl with extra steps, but bear with me. If you stick around until the end, you'll see that this isn't just a way of mapping. It's a way of building a cohesive world and a cohesive story, even when everything you're creating is generated at random with tables and oracles. So let's use an example. You start out from your settlement. This is your first tile. Tiles are represented by humble index cards. Every index card is a tile. You put your mini or a token on it to represent you or your party. And that's the whole map. That's all you've got. This is an important part about Mausworn, the Rustlands, the world that I created. They're unknown, uncharted, and vast. You're a little mice, there are no maps, so you're going in blind. So when you play, you don't prepare a map in advance. What you have is a lead and a direction. So suppose you have a lead that says there is a cache of rare seeds somewhere north of here. Okay, so off you go. You roll for the weather, then you make your travel roll. You decide how hard you want to push. That is, how much stamina you're willing to spend. You roll plus your stamina. The stamina you spend is the modifier for this roll. And the result of this roll determines how well this leg of the journey goes. Since you're heading north, you take a new blank index card and place it north of the one you're on. You then move your mini to this new tile, and with the help of the oracles, you build the scenery and whatever it is, the event of that tile. And you can sketch a little something to represent it. Now, notice something important. Tile crawling is not to scale. These two tiles are side by side, but that doesn't mean that the places are next to each other. How far apart are they? It doesn't matter, it's abstract. All it means is that this is the new waypoint on this journey you're taking. So keep that in mind. You then resolve whatever the event here is. It can be an encounter, a discovery, a moment of respite, a landmark, a feature, whatever. But importantly, before you move on, you flip the index card over and jot down the important stuff you found. New factions, mice you met or other animals, NPCs, threads that are worth pulling afterwards, discoveries, treasures, whatever stood out. If something feels like you'd want to come back to it later, if it feels that it's important, that you want to investigate or you want to bring back to the story, you highlight it. Let's put a pin on this highlighting thing. This part is very important and I'll come back to why. As you see, your tile isn't only a visual representation, it's also a journey log that you can revisit as you play. And then you keep going. Let's imagine the next tile gives you a frog NPC and the frog has news. A mouse merchant that everyone assumed was lost has been spotted to the west in bad shape. So what do? Do you stick to a route north or do you take the detour west? This is where your map starts to branch. One of my favorite things about tile crawling is that it is fractal. Now I know I'm stretching the definition of fractal a bit, but here's what I mean. Say that during your travels, you come across a tunnel abandoned by moles, let's say, and you decide to delve it. Now that's a dungeon crawl, right? So what do you do here? Well, you tile crawl it. Remember, tiles are not to scale, so if you need to zoom in, you use the exact same procedure to explore, for example, a dungeon. Each tile may represent an area or a section or a room. If you arrive at a town and you want to explore it, you can zoom in and have each tile represent a neighborhood, for example. If one particular building turns out to be interesting, you zoom in again and use tiles to represent the floors or different rooms. Do you want a closer look at an area for exploration or even for a tactical fight? Zoom in one more time and let the tiles represent perhaps zones of a battle map. And get this, if you're feeling particularly adventurous, you can have tiles represent the parts of a huge beast you're facing and have your mouse climb it, Shadow of the Colossus style. So, with all these ways of using tile crawling, and since a tile can represent anything and everything at any scale, the whole game ends up happening on a tile. Your mice are always standing on a tile of some kind at all times. And why does that matter? Because it works as a focal point. I think you might have had this experience yourself. Even if you don't normally use minis or grids or maps, even if you play pure theater of the mind, there's this moment when someone grabs a piece of paper and roughly sketches the room and where everybody's standing, and suddenly there's a focal point at a table that has immense power to grab attention and ground everyone in what's actually happening. Even when the sketch isn't a faithful representation of the situation, just having something to look at while you play keeps everyone on the same page. Now, you might be thinking that after a while, this sea of index cards on your table gets confusing, right? How do you know what connects to what? How do you keep track of the paths? Well, it's actually very simple. You use a simple code, a letter and a number, plus little arrows in the corners that tell you what each card connects to. That's it. I explain it in more detail in the book, of course, with tips on how to manage everything as your map grows. But the important part is what this method allows you to do. See, tile crawling maps are not fixed, they are flexible. Remember, tiles that sit side by side aren't necessarily adjacent in the real world. Between one and the other, there's a whole leg of the journey you never saw. So let's say that later on you find out there was something in that gap, something you walked right past the first time. For example, let's say a hidden pond with a sunken treasure in it, supposedly. No problem. You just spread those two tiles apart and you slot a new blank tile in between them to represent the piece you just discovered. Then you draw the pond, put your mouse there, and then you adjust the numbers on the connections, and that's it. Map updated. Of course, if the players want to, they're encouraged to draw their own map of what they found as they play. That reinforces the whole theme of mice charting an uncharted world. They'll be erasing and correcting as they learn more. The map becomes an artifact of their exploration. It can even be an in-world artifact, something that their mice actually drew. When your session ends, you stack the tiles of each patch. The patches like a journey or a delve or a city. You put them into their own piles and clip them together. Next session, you don't need to rebuild the whole map, of course. You just grab the few tiles that matter for what you're about to play and lay those out on the table. But the keen eye among you might have already noticed something else. Those stacks have become something like a deck of cards. And that's really interesting. Remember when I said that on the back of each card, you write down the important things you found and you highlight the ones you think might come back into your story later on? Well, the event builder that I designed for this game can also establish connections. Whatever you find on a tile can be completely new and random, or it can tie into your current mission, into a personal pursuit, or into something that happened earlier in your adventure. So let's say you followed a rumor about the merchant that was seen in a bad shape to the west. Remember that? Okay, you get there and the event builder oracle tells you this event is connected to something that happened previously in your adventure. What do? You grab your stack of tiles that have become a deck of cards, remember? Pull one at random and flip it over to see what you highlighted there. If there's one or more things highlighted there, you can use any of them. If there isn't, you can draw another tile or just look through the notes and find something interesting. Whatever is happening on the tile you're standing on right now is now connected to that thing that happened before. So in this example, you pull a tile, you look at the back, and you're reminded that you found a feather, probably from an owl. Suddenly, you now know this merchant was attacked by an owl and that there's probably one hunting around here, which is very bad news for mice. So this is what the system does. Encounters that looked random start feeding back into the story you're building. I tend to think that oracles are very good at creating threats and plot points, but not nearly as good at bringing them back and making them actually pay off. So this is my way of closing that loop. You end up weaving a cohesive story even though all of it is generated at the table with no plot plan in advance. A faction you invented 6 tiles ago comes back as you find a bandit, or a mysterious illness in a settlement turns out to be connected to a mushroom you found in a cave somewhere. You can tell I'm really excited to get this into your hands. You can read more about Tilecrawling in the live document I keep available for free. There is a link below. You can go there, read. I'm developing the game in the open, that is, you can read the alpha today, leave your comments, suggestions, and questions, not only on Tilecrawling, but in everything. More importantly, I'm bringing Mausworn to BackerKit to crowdfund, and I'd love it if you give it a follow. It's coming up very soon. Every follow counts to show BackerKit that people are interested in this game. There's a lot more to talk about this game besides Tilecrawling. I'm building over 200 oracles specifically for Mausworn. I'm blending Mausritter and Iron Sword mechanics into something that is completely new and that I honestly think you're gonna love. So now that I've made it to the end, what do you think about Tilecrawling? Is it worth the effort not to use just Hexcrawl or Pointcrawl? Any questions or suggestions? Leave them in the comments below. Don't forget to follow the project on BackerKit, and that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and I see you next time.